Have you ever wondered if everything you've been taught about the past, the sacred texts, and the destiny of humanity might be incomplete or even deliberately hidden? What if some ancient truths were buried for centuries, not lost by accident, but suppressed by powers that feared what knowledge could awaken in us? Imagine discovering a prophecy so powerful that it reframes not only our understanding of history, but also what is yet to come. This is not the kind of secret whispered in myths or confined to conspiracy theories. It is grounded in real texts that have survived the centuries, texts that scholars like Jonas have studied deeply, revealing layers of hidden meaning. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in the mid-20th century, have fascinated historians and religious scholars alike, yet few truly grasp the radical implications they contain. Among the scrolls are messages that speak of cosmic battles, unseen forces, and the true nature of humanity's path, concepts that were central to Gnostic thought, which the early church worked tirelessly to obscure. If what the Gnostics understood about these writings is accurate, then the scrolls do more than recount history. They offer a coded prophecy, a lens through which we can glimpse the future. As we explore this hidden prophecy, consider this. What if your understanding of morality, power, and divine purpose is shaped by incomplete narratives? Could it be that much of what we accept as truth is filtered through centuries of interpretation designed to control, guide, or even mislead? Today, we will delve into the scrolls, uncover symbols, decode messages, and examine interpretations that challenge the familiar story of our past and our future. You'll see how Gnostic scholars like Jonas interpret these writings, and why they believe these revelations were meant to awaken humanity to a deeper, more spiritual reality. Before we begin, take a moment to ask yourself, how would your view of the world change if you discovered that key truths had been hidden from you all along? And as you reflect, I invite you to subscribe to this channel so you can continue uncovering hidden revelations, following these ancient truths as they emerge from the shadows. This journey is not just about learning. It's about awakening to knowledge that has been waiting quietly for those willing to seek it. For centuries, the true messages of the Dead Sea Scrolls were obscured, carefully hidden behind layers of interpretation, translation, and censorship. While the discovery of these scrolls in the Qumran caves caused a sensation, much of the world still only sees fragments, isolated quotes, or simplified versions. The reason is not merely academic difficulty. Some scholars argue that there was a deliberate suppression of their most radical content. These writings speak of forces beyond ordinary perception, of cosmic rulers, and unseen hierarchies that influence human destiny. The scrolls do not present a simple moral code, but a sophisticated spiritual cosmology, one that the early religious institutions often sought to neutralize, fearing that such knowledge could disrupt their authority and the familiar structures of belief. Jonas, the renowned Gnostic scholar, suggested that the scrolls reflect a worldview in which humanity is caught in a tension between spiritual liberation and material entrapment. This perspective, central to Gnostic thought, frames our history as a story not just of kings and empires, but of hidden spiritual forces shaping our experiences. Many of these ideas were systematically erased or reinterpreted by mainstream religious authorities, who emphasized obedience and ritual over gnosis, or direct knowledge. The problem was not merely the survival of texts, but the survival of understanding how to read and interpret these prophecies without being misled. The result is that the scrolls' most transformative teachings were veiled, their full meaning accessible only to those willing to question received dogma and explore deeper spiritual realities. The suppression is subtle, yet profound. Symbols, names, and references to archons or cosmic intermediaries were often replaced or sanitized in public versions of sacred texts, stripping away layers of meaning that revealed humanity's true potential and the stakes of our spiritual journey. Even today, when scholars translate and analyze the scrolls, they frequently focus on the historical or ritual aspects, overlooking the hidden esoteric knowledge embedded in cryptic passages. It is precisely this hidden dimension the part that speaks to unseen spiritual hierarchies and future events. That forms the heart of the prophecy that Jonas and other Gnostic thinkers emphasize. Ask yourself, if forces have gone to such lengths to conceal certain knowledge, what does that say about the power contained in it? Could it be that the scrolls are not just historical documents, but a warning, a map, and a guide, all encoded in language and symbols designed to endure through time? As we proceed, keep in mind that the central problem is not the existence of the scrolls themselves, but the layers of secrecy, interpretation, and intentional distortion that have kept their most profound truths hidden from ordinary perception. This concealment has created a spiritual amnesia, leaving humanity unaware of the deeper destiny laid out in these ancient writings. The Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered between 1947 and 1956 in a series of caves near Qumran, a site along the northwest shore of the Dead Sea. These ancient manuscripts, some dating back more than 2,000 years, include fragments of biblical texts, apocryphal writings, and sectarian documents that reveal the beliefs and practices of a community often identified as the Essenes. Yet beyond their historical and religious significance, the scrolls contain layers of hidden meaning that Gnostic scholars like Jonas argue point to a far deeper spiritual knowledge. Jonas suggested that embedded in these texts are coded messages about the nature of existence, the struggle between light and darkness, and the unseen forces sometimes called archons that govern human perception and experience. Unlike mainstream interpretations that frame the scrolls as purely historical artifacts, the Gnostic perspective sees them as a prophetic map, an esoteric guide meant to awaken humanity to realities often obscured by conventional religion. One of the most striking features of the scrolls is their symbolic language. References to sons of light and sons of darkness go beyond mere moral metaphor. They depict spiritual hierarchies and cosmic entities that influence the unfolding of human history. Some passages describe a hidden knowledge, or gnosis, accessible only to those who actively seek understanding, a theme central to Gnostic thought. The scrolls also allude to cycles of conflict and redemption, portraying the material world as a kind of prison overseen by entities that manipulate human destiny. Here, we encounter the first major revelation. The scrolls do not just chronicle human events. They suggest that our fate is intertwined with invisible forces, and that awakening to this truth is both a spiritual imperative and a pathway to liberation. Scholars like Jonas emphasize that understanding this context radically changes how we interpret human history, morality, and the purpose of our existence. Archaeological discoveries have supported these interpretations in unexpected ways. Cave inscriptions, hidden chambers, and fragmented texts all point to a community highly aware of the spiritual dangers of ignorance and manipulation. For the Gnostics, the scrolls represented a warning. Knowledge is power, and the forces that control information are the very forces that shape our collective destiny. Some scholars, like Elaine Pagels, argue that these texts were actively suppressed or misrepresented as heretical, precisely because they challenged the emerging orthodoxy. The scrolls' references to messianic figures, cosmic battles, and divine revelation suggest a prophecy not only about past events, but also about the future trajectory of humanity, hinting at a time when these truths would re-emerge and offer guidance to those who are awake and searching. Consider the implications. If these texts contain a prophecy about humanity's future, why have so many of us remained unaware? The Gnostic interpretation offers a compelling answer. Our perception of reality is shaped by hidden forces, and only through conscious pursuit of gnosis can we pierce the veil of deception. By studying the scrolls with this perspective, we begin to see patterns of control, cycles of spiritual forgetting, and moments where knowledge was almost lost forever. This turning point, the recognition that ancient prophecies were deliberately obscured, is the key to unlocking the scrolls' message. It reveals a map of existence that encourages personal awakening, discernment, and an understanding that what we experience in the material world is not the full story. So I ask you, as you hear about these hidden prophecies, do you feel curiosity, doubt, or perhaps even unease? What would it mean for your life if you realized that the world you perceive is only a shadow of a greater spiritual reality? Reflect on this, and as we move forward, think about how these ancient messages could reshape not just our understanding of history, but our very approach to the present and future. By engaging with these questions, you are participating in the same journey that Gnostic scholars have pursued for centuries, seeking the knowledge that has been buried yet persists through time. As we delve deeper into the Dead Sea Scrolls, we encounter a universe layered with meaning, populated by symbols, figures, and forces that most readers overlook. The Gnostics interpreted these texts not just as historical accounts, but as guides to understanding the unseen dimensions of existence. Central to this interpretation is the concept of the demiurge, a figure often misunderstood in popular imagination. Unlike the benevolent creator depicted in conventional teachings, the demiurge is portrayed as a lesser divine entity, a craftsman of the material world who inadvertently or deliberately obscures the higher truth from humanity. Some Gnostic texts suggest that the demiurge maintains a kind of spiritual prison, keeping souls trapped in ignorance, while shadows of divine knowledge flicker faintly through coded prophecies, symbols, and secret teachings. The Dead Sea Scrolls, in this sense, are not neutral documents. They are part of a hidden dialogue, an attempt to preserve knowledge that could awaken the imprisoned spirit. Symbols in the scrolls serve as keys to understanding this concealed reality. Terms like sons of light and sons of darkness, references to hidden angels, and cryptic descriptions of cosmic battles are not merely allegorical. They encode instructions, warnings, and guidance. For instance, the scrolls speak of cycles of destruction and renewal, pointing to recurring patterns in human history, influenced by entities that are invisible to ordinary perception. Some scholars, including Jonas, argue that these forces correspond to what the Gnostics called archons, intermediaries between the divine and the human, whose influence can subtly manipulate perception, morality, and social structures. The archons are neither purely evil nor purely good. They are regulators of the material world, and their existence explains why humanity has historically struggled to access pure spiritual knowledge. The scrolls, when interpreted through this lens, become more than a historical treasure. They are a manual for recognizing the obstacles that prevent spiritual awakening. The process of distortion is a recurring theme throughout history. As the scrolls' knowledge intersected with developing religious institutions, much of the esoteric content was removed, reinterpreted, or hidden. The early church, according to Gnostic interpretations, sought to control the narrative by emphasizing obedience, ritual, and moral instruction while suppressing teachings that revealed the material world's limitations and the presence of higher, hidden realities. This is why Jonas emphasized the importance of decoding symbols. Without understanding their true context, one might mistake the scrolls for simple prophetic or legalistic texts, missing the profound spiritual guidance encrypted within. The distortion was subtle but persistent, creating a society in which the majority of humanity unknowingly accepted a filtered version of reality. Yet, the scrolls also point to redemption and awakening. Embedded within their complex language are signs for those willing to look beyond surface, meanings clues to recognize false authority, perceive hidden influences, and cultivate direct knowledge of the divine. These messages are not abstract. They have practical implications. By understanding the forces that distort truth, one can begin to discern authentic spiritual insights from manipulation or dogma. This realization reframes our everyday experience. Political systems, religious institutions, and even personal relationships are seen in light of a larger, often invisible spiritual context. The ancient texts teach that knowledge, discernment, and spiritual vigilance are essential for navigating the unseen forces that shape reality. Consider this. If the archons and the demiurge have influenced human perception for centuries, What power might be unlocked by awakening to this truth today? How would your understanding of free will, destiny, and moral choice transform if you could see beyond the veil of material control? The scrolls challenge us to question not only historical narratives, but also the frameworks through which we interpret our present. They demand a kind of conscious engagement, a willingness to decode symbols, to seek gnosis, and to recognize the subtle, often hidden, forces that shape our lives. Reflect on this and imagine the possibilities. Knowledge that was once suppressed, now partially recovered, guiding those who are ready to perceive it. Now, ask yourself, you content with the reality presented to you, or are you willing to explore the deeper truths that have been hidden for millennia? As you ponder this, remember that each symbol, each cryptic passage, is an invitation to awaken, to see beyond ordinary perception, and to participate in a centuries-long quest to reclaim the knowledge of our true destiny. It is at this stage that the Dead Sea Scrolls reveal their most profound secret, a prophecy long obscured, a vision of the future encoded in language, symbolism, and spiritual instruction. The Gnostics, as Hans Jonas explains, interpreted certain passages not merely as reflections of the past, but as messages intended to guide humanity through cycles of ignorance and awakening. One striking example involves the teacher of righteousness, a figure repeatedly referenced in the scrolls who embodies knowledge, insight, and the potential for spiritual liberation. Scholars debate whether this figure was a historical person, a symbolic archetype, or a hybrid of both. Yet the essential point remains. The scrolls anticipate the emergence of those capable of discerning hidden truths, individuals who can navigate the forces that have historically distorted reality. This prophecy suggests that human history is not merely a sequence of events, but a carefully structured journey in which awakening is both possible and necessary. The scrolls also contain vivid, often cryptic imagery describing cosmic shifts and upheavals. Some passages speak of a time when the spiritual forces that have constrained human understanding, those archons and the demiurge, will be challenged, revealing the deeper divine order. The Gnostics saw this as an invitation to inner transformation. To awaken, one must cultivate knowledge, perceive reality beyond appearances, and recognize that the material world is only a reflection of a higher truth. Hans Jonas emphasized that these insights are not abstract. They are practical instructions for discerning reality, making ethical choices, and understanding the patterns of history as interconnected with unseen spiritual dynamics. The prophecy is not a simple prediction. It is a roadmap for those willing to engage with the hidden, for those who seek liberation from the forces that obscure wisdom and spiritual freedom. Consider the implications for our modern world. In an age dominated by information, yet marked by confusion, deception, and manipulation, the scroll's messages take on extraordinary relevance. They warn that many of the forces shaping contemporary society, political, social, and even religious, may be influenced by patterns first described in these ancient texts. The Gnostic perspective urges careful observation and discernment, to question narratives, to seek truth beyond appearances, and to understand that history often repeats itself, not by accident, but through cycles, dictated by both visible and invisible powers. The scrolls remind us that true insight requires more than acceptance. It requires active engagement, courage, and the willingness to see what others cannot or will not acknowledge. Perhaps the most shocking aspect of this prophecy is how personal it is. The scrolls suggest that each individual has the potential to recognize these hidden truths, to awaken from the spiritual amnesia imposed by centuries of filtered knowledge, and to participate consciously in the unfolding of cosmic destiny. This is where Hans Jonas' scholarship becomes vital. By interpreting the scrolls through the lens of Gnostic thought, he reveals that these are not distant or irrelevant messages. They are deeply connected to human consciousness, morality, and choice. The prophecy encourages us to reclaim the agency that has been obscured, to see our lives as part of a larger spiritual narrative, and to recognize that awakening is both a personal and collective imperative. Now, pause Pause for a moment and reflect. If these texts have been hidden for millennia, preserved only in fragments and cryptic symbols, what does it say about the importance of their revelation today? How might your life change if you began to see beyond conventional interpretations, perceiving the hidden structures that shape your reality? The scrolls, when understood through Gnostic insight, do not merely tell us what will happen. They invite us to participate actively in the process of awakening, to reclaim knowledge that has been buried, and to align our actions with truths that transcend the ordinary, visible world. This turning point is not just historical. It is an invitation for you, here and now, to engage with the forces that have quietly guided humanity for centuries, to awaken to the prophecy, and to see the world as it truly is. The true power of the Dead Sea Scrolls, as Hans Jonas and Gnostic scholars reveal, is not confined to history. It extends directly into the present, offering a lens through which we can understand the world we live in and the forces that influence our lives. The prophecy encoded in the scrolls is not an abstract warning or a distant prediction. It is a mirror, reflecting the dynamics of power, perception, and spiritual potential that shape our daily reality. Consider the social, political, and cultural currents around you, the narratives we are told, the information we receive, and even the frameworks of morality and authority often carry the imprint of these hidden forces. The Gnostic message embedded in the scrolls encourages us to question what we are told, to observe critically, and to recognize that much of what passes as reality is filtered through layers designed to maintain control, preserve ignorance, or obscure higher truths. Hans Jonas emphasized that the scrolls illustrate the ongoing tension between the visible and invisible worlds, between surface events and the deeper spiritual realities that govern them. The prophecy suggests that humanity's future is not predetermined in a rigid sense, but is shaped by the awareness, choices, and spiritual awakening of individuals and communities. This insight is both empowering and daunting. It means that your perception, your discernment, and your pursuit of knowledge are active components in the unfolding of destiny. The scrolls call on us to awaken to our latent potential, to see beyond material appearances, and to cultivate the gnosis that allows us to navigate life with clarity and purpose. Every choice, every moment of conscious awareness becomes a step toward realizing the deeper truths that the scrolls have safeguarded for centuries. The influence of these hidden prophecies is also personal. They challenge us to examine our inner world, to recognize the patterns of thought, belief, and behavior that may have been shaped by external control, social conditioning, or the subtle pressures of authority figures. The scrolls teach that liberation comes not through rejection of the material world, but through understanding it, through discerning the forces at play, and reclaiming autonomy over our consciousness. By interpreting the scrolls through a Gnostic lens, we uncover a roadmap for spiritual resilience, ethical awareness, and the cultivation of insight in an age where distraction, manipulation, and superficiality often dominate. This is the practical dimension of an ancient prophecy. It equips the seeker to navigate reality with wisdom, to align with enduring principles, and to participate consciously in shaping both personal and collective futures. Consider the symbolism of the sons of light and the sons of darkness repeated in the scrolls. In the present day, these concepts manifest not just as abstract metaphors, but as real dynamics. The light representing awareness, knowledge, and awakening, and the darkness representing ignorance, control, and spiritual distraction. By perceiving these forces in our surroundings, we gain clarity about why certain events unfold as they do, why society often resists change, and why moments of insight can feel both revelatory and threatening. The prophecy embedded in the scrolls, when decoded, offers a key. It teaches us how to recognize the patterns, interpret signs, and align ourselves with the forces of awakening, rather than remaining passive participants in cycles we do not understand. Hans Jonas saw this as the ultimate aim of Gnostic interpretation, to transform historical knowledge into living wisdom, enabling humans to reclaim agency over their spiritual and material destiny. Now, Imagine applying this insight to your own life. How would your decisions, your relationships, and your understanding of reality shift if you truly grasped that unseen forces influence what you perceive and experience? The scrolls suggest that awakening is not reserved for an elite few, but is available to anyone willing to seek knowledge, question authority, and cultivate discernment. By reflecting on these ancient prophecies, we begin to see the world as a stage where spiritual awakening and human choice intersect, where insight can illuminate paths hidden to ordinary perception, and where our understanding of the past informs how we navigate the future. Ask yourself, which parts of your life have been shaped by narratives you never questioned, by truths filtered through centuries of suppression, or by authority figures who may not have wanted you to know the full story? The Dead Sea Scrolls, through their cryptic wisdom, call on you to awaken, to perceive the hidden currents, and to reclaim understanding that is not merely intellectual, but deeply transformative. This is the climax of revelation. The texts do not merely predict or describe, they empower, guiding those who engage with them to navigate life with clarity, purpose, and awareness of the hidden forces that surround us. Reflect on this and ask yourself, how far are you willing to go to awaken to the knowledge that has been quietly preserved for millennia, waiting for seekers like you to uncover it? As we reach the culmination of this journey through the hidden prophecy of the Dead Sea Scrolls, it becomes clear that what we have explored is far more than a historical curiosity. These ancient texts, studied and interpreted by Gnostic scholars like Jonas, are living messages, guiding humanity toward awareness, discernment, and spiritual awakening. The prophecy they contain is not a distant, abstract prediction. It is a call to consciousness, an invitation to recognize the unseen forces that shape our reality, and to reclaim the knowledge that has been obscured for millennia. Understanding the scrolls is not merely an academic exercise. It is a transformative act, one that allows us to navigate life with insight, clarity, and a deeper connection to the spiritual dimensions that underlie our existence. By exploring the scrolls, we have seen how knowledge was hidden, distorted, and partially lost, yet preserved in symbols, codes, and esoteric teachings. We have uncovered references to cosmic forces, archons, and the demiurge, and learned how these concepts reveal the unseen mechanisms influencing human history and personal destiny. Most importantly, we have discovered that these prophecies are not fixed mandates, but guides for awakening, showing that our perception, choices, and pursuit of truth are essential in shaping our path. The Gnostics, and scholars like Jonas, who interpret their insights, remind us that awakening is both an individual and collective responsibility, an opportunity to see beyond surface appearances and engage consciously with the forces that govern reality. Now, I invite you to participate actively in this ongoing quest. Share your thoughts in the comments. What resonates most with you about these hidden prophecies? How do you perceive the influence of unseen forces in your life? And what steps might you take to awaken to the deeper truths they reveal? Commenting, reflecting, and discussing these ideas is not just an interaction. It is a way to honor the knowledge preserved in the scrolls and to join a community of seekers who value insight over ignorance. By liking, subscribing, and engaging with this channel, you help keep these revelations alive, ensuring that the wisdom buried for centuries is not forgotten, but shared with those ready to awaken. As you move forward, remember that the journey does not end here. The Dead Sea Scrolls and the teachings of the Gnostics are guides pointing toward ongoing discovery, toward questions that challenge, illuminate, and expand your understanding of existence. What truths are still hidden, waiting for you to perceive them? Which forces continue to shape the world without your awareness? And how might you align yourself with insight rather than deception? These are not simple questions. They are invitations to live consciously, to seek gnosis, and to embrace the awakening that the scrolls have quietly promised for millennia. Let this be the beginning of a journey, not the conclusion. A journey of discernment, revelation, and profound connection to the hidden dimensions of reality. Where knowledge is power, awakening is liberation. And every step taken in awareness brings us closer to the truths that have long waited for humanity to remember.